Look at all this lovely grey. Look at it, it's all over the place. Did you know that grey is the new black? It's the in thing to have. All the interior design programs, they're using grey. Now, if you're watching this on Dave and it's the year 2020, it's now 2011 and grey is in. I mean, look at Janie, for goodness. Here, look, give me the camera. Look at this. Here we go. Look at that, almost head to toe in grey. I've even managed to break the camera and knock the microphone off. Never mind, a little comedy moment for you there. Right, but what has this got to do with it? Now, grey cards. What does a grey card look like? Here's one I bought this morning on the way here, because to be honest, they're a bit of a thing of the past. People don't really use grey cards much these days. The grey card is halfway between black and white. It's 50% grey. Now, they can be used to ensure you've got an accurate exposure on your camera. You can also use them for colour accuracy, particularly if you're shooting raw. This one is white on one side and grey on the other. Now, your camera can't think. It thinks the whole world is this tone. Because of that, if you're shooting in extreme conditions like dark or bright, the camera will probably get it wrong because it's going to try and make it like that. This is great for the average kind of shot in average conditions. Let me just show you how you would use one if you chose to. Lawrence, I'm just going to borrow you, if I may, and get you to come over here. Pick up my camera, which I leave handily on the floor. Right, pretty good. Lawrence, go that way a little bit. Only a tiny, whoa, too much, back, that's it. There was a saddle stem growing out of his head and we don't really want it. Now, let's say I'm going to shoot the shot. This really only applies if you're shooting in manual, to be quite honest. But what you can do is, with the camera in an auto mode, the grey side like this, just hold it in front of your subject, careful not to shade it with your own body, and just fill the viewfinder with that grey. Wake the camera up by half pressing the button and you can read through the viewfinder what the exposure should be. This says 125th of a second at f6.3. So you go into manual and you set 125th of a second at f6.3, and that should be the correct exposure. Now, I don't know if you noticed, in between me doing that and setting it, the sun came out. This is why they're a bit fiddly, an old hat. But there we go, I could then take a shot. It's dropped back down again. I reckon we're okay. Here we go, Lawrence the moody skateboarder again. Cool, and the exposure is correct. For colour correction, it's quite handy because you know what colour this is. This is grey on one side, if I can open it, and it's white on the other. So you can hold that in your hand on the computer when you've got that shot and you know what colour it is. But I can also quickly take a shot like that with that in it. So what I can do is look at the colours that I'm going to set when I do the post-production. I can hold that in this hand and look at the screen, and I can adjust the colours until they're right. Then I can set those adjustments onto the proper image, which doesn't have that in it. If you're shooting raw, you've got a little eyedropper for collecting colours. All you do is click onto the grey. That will give you the correct colour balance, and then you copy those settings onto the file which doesn't have the card in. Am I making sense? Hope so. There is one more thing. Suppose you've got a really bright background. Lawrence, can you come over here? We're going to just put you against the sun. Let's say, I'm going back to exposure for a moment. Say you're in the Alps. It's really, really bright. Now, you can see the sky's quite bright there. If I was to set the camera up, I'm going to stick it back onto aperture prior. No, full program. That'll do. Let's say I was going to do a widest shot with Lawrence against that sky. It's a rubbish picture, I know, but we haven't got the budget to go to the Alps right now. If I just let the camera deal with it, there's a good chance we will have a complete silhouette because the light meter's been confused by all that brightness and it's darkened it down. The camera doesn't know that Lawrence is the subject of the picture. So if I again go into manual mode and I get my grey card, come on, open thing, here we go, and I hold that in front of Lawrence. By looking at that, I know, again, it's 125th at 6.3. Just pure fluke that. I've set that manually now, 126 at 6.3, recompose the shot. Hang on, get it right in a minute. Recompose the shot, and as you can see, Lawrence is now the correct exposure. So really, that's all there is to it. A grey card is kind of old-fashioned. You can get smaller ones. They're very, very handy for getting your colours right if you're shooting raw. But to be honest, it's much easier to do your exposure just by using exposure compensation on the camera. Quick, come back up, come back up. And I forgot, Lawrence, come back, come back, come back. Sorry, it's one of those days. Right, Lawrence, stand there, that's it, brilliant. Another way you could do that with the grey, if you're in a program mode, which I was, you could either do it manually like I just did, but also on the back of the camera here, you've got an auto exposure lock. It's a little button. When you press it, it locks the exposure. So if I go back here, and again, fill the screen with grey, press the exposure lock button, as long as I keep my thumb on there, it's going to keep that locked. I can wave the camera around, and as long as my thumb's there, it's good. Compose the shot, and take it. Once again, it's got the exposure spot on. I think that's all now.